Welcome back to another episode of the Deductionist podcast, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you're doing famously and awesomely and having a lovely, wonderful day. I'm going to tell you this right from the get-go. I'm going to keep tonight's episode shorter than usual because for those of you that can't hear, a bit like within my voice, I don't actually feel very well. My asthma has been kicking my arse for a couple of weeks now. So I tend to spend most of my time coughing. Case in point, right on cue. So, for the sake of my own health, and I suppose for the health of your ears, I'm not going to spend the entire night just coughing into the microphone for you having to listen to that. So I'm going to keep it to a shorter discussion than normal. Good evening, Mr. Jane. Hope you're keeping well, sir. I still love it when that pops up, like The Mentalist. Great show. So it is. We'll do the kind of the usual stuff that pops up. Right, we'll do the usual stuff that pops up first. The monographs 2. Where are we moving forward with this? Right, as of when the Kickstarter came to an end, 2 weeks until I get the books to me, and then everything is starting to be sent out. So the forms and the questionnaires that you guys get sent out at the end of the Kickstarters has been done. I think we've got most of those back by now. But if you haven't, that will obviously slow down the delivery for your side. But that's your fault if you haven't filled in the questionnaire yet. Not mine. There's nothing I can do about that. If you haven't filled in the questionnaire and you know about it, it is an important part of the Kickstarter process and does speed things along immeasurably. So get that filled in at your earliest convenience as well. Thank you, Mr. Jane. I appreciate your well wishes. And so yeah, that's the Kickstarter. That's the Kickstarter. In terms of pipes on the Omniscient program and the various other courses that are getting added to that. There was a little moment when I first started building this, when some of the plans, the lesson plans that I was putting together went out live before I'd finished them off. And so a bunch of you guys kind of snuck through the cracks on that one, so I've kicked you all out. So nobody can get it. And so yeah, it's just not ready. I'm waiting to get to the stage of when I can put together a series of webinar programs and free stuff that you guys can get involved in. I want it to be this kind of full, comprehensive, complete package that should tick a lot of boxes in that way. It should tick a lot of boxes. We've got it going out with the productive communication stuff from the Behavioral Intelligence Academy. If you haven't seen anything to do with those guys, or you haven't heard me chat to Bob before, go back to the very first episode of the podcast. They were the very first. Sorry, I say they because it was Bob and Jim. He was one of the very first interviews that I did for the podcast itself. Wonderful man. And we've got some fun stuff we're working on together in terms of investigative conversations, and so yeah, that's enough about that. That's the admin stuff out of the way. Right? From here, what we start to look at is the modern day applications for deductive reasoning. But obviously, if you've been around the channel or the podcast for any length of time, you will know that it's not just deductive reasoning. Deduction is more of a term that is what's the best way of describing it? It's more of a buzzword terminology that is thrown around as part of the books, because the books, they are designed to be narratives, they're designed to be stories, they're designed to be entertaining. They're not meant to be these treatises on critical thinking and the proper ways to do it and how to do it and when to do it and all of this kind of thing. That's not the place for the descriptions of that process within the book itself. It's not those kinds of stories You know, the Sherlock Holmes canon. I picked these up yesterday from a dear friend of mine's mum. She was getting rid of them, and so I was having them as a result. But yeah, so that's it. Goes into deductive reasoning, inductive reasoning, and abductive reasoning, which differ in terms of direction and differ in terms of the strength of pattern that links each step in the chain of reasoning that you observe. That would be fair to say in that particular scenario. Now, there are a veritable shitload of reasons as to why I'm such a fan of learning to think about things in this way. Outside of work. Because my working day is built. it's built upon this method of using the information that we see in a very specific and targeted way, right? But it's one of those things that I get asked in different settings, first of all, in different ways. But it kind of boils down to, is it just about detection and law enforcement? No. No. This should be, in my opinion, and bear in mind I'm going to preface it by saying it is only an opinion, right? But it should be, in my opinion, something that we are taught from a very, very early age. And the main kind of reason, I was struggling to think of a better word for that, the main reason that I think that is because, brace yourself, I'm about to get on my kind of old man soapbox. I believe that we have lost the ability to disagree with each other. And that is a kind of an ambiguously utilitarian term of sorts that aims to say a lot without really saying a great deal. But if you think about the amount of disagreements that happen on a day-to-day basis with potentially anyone that you would encounter within your world, right, whether that be work, friends, socially, this kind of thing, that disagreements, as and when they pop up, by and large, we as human beings don't know how to deal with them. Whether it be, internally, oh, somebody's disagreed with me, therefore X, Y, and Z, or externally, as in, I disagree with this person because of X, Y, Z. That whole kind of scenario doesn't lend itself to a great deal of emotional intelligence. Doesn't lend itself to a great deal of intelligence at all in any situation. And that's not out of saying one is smarter than somebody else, because I'm saying that when you lose the ability to critically think about what it is that you are talking about, that you are getting involved in, that you are letting influence your day, or influencing the day of those that you interact with, then there are challenges to your own kind of psychological well-being. Right? There are those that see accusations in every comment, like the proverbial husband as he's walking out the door, as his wife says to him, "Is that what you're wearing?" In those situations, if you don't have the capacity to reason through that question, it might be a perception of a threat. Threat was the wrong word. It might be attack is what I meant, like an accusation. Like, is that what you're wearing? You look like a scrubber, whatever it is. I'm wearing a t-shirt that hasn't been ironed and has a hole in. Not because I am a gross individual. I am, but that's not why I'm wearing this. It's because I was working on the car before we started here. I need a new battery. That's a whole other conversation. But if you think of the amount of information that we have to get involved in, that we never really think about, right? One that gets me a lot, because I'm a movie fan, right? I'm a movie buff. I'm not a buff. I like films, and the whole kind of surrounding universe of film. So when you see, you know, a trailer for something or a film poster for something that you're interested in, you immediately go, oh my God, this is going to be amazing. And you start that train of, oh, I want to see it, as opposed to thinking, wait a minute. There will be signs as to whether this is fan made, or, you know, whether this is April Fool's Day, or, you know, any other things that go into this. And you stop thinking because you've lent too far into this emotional connection to it. Let's see what Mr. Jane has to say. Today I had an argument with people on the internet and they basically attacked me because I didn't agree with them. A perfect example. I'm sorry you had to go through that, mate. That sucks. But here's one that I was gonna tell you about right now. I obviously putting a lot of well, I say a lot of. I did a few of the body language videos, mainly just to stop from being bored during lockdown. You will note that when we came out of lockdown, I stopped doing. That is a pattern. Apply your inductive reasoning. But there was one. There's one that's on the top of my channel. It's the guys that accused Michael Jackson of doing all that stuff in the documentary Leaving Neverland. Now, with it being a touchy subject for loads of people, regardless of what kind of opinions that are held, it is a touchy subject, right? No pun intended. And this person, Julie Goff, 1731, God bless you, commented on this. This is a ton I could pick from, but because this is the most recent, I'm using this as not that all I get are hate comments, by the way. Just that it's quite a popular video, so there are a number of hate comments. Anyway, I'm over explaining. They put on this: "Stop talking. You are as bad as Piers Morgan. We want to hear from the subject, not you." So, on the one hand, I could lean into that and take massive amounts of offense. I could absolutely do that. Or I could apply a certain element of deductive reasoning. In that, we know from deductive reasoning there is an irrefutable nature of cause and effect, right? If I have 2 and 2, then n equals, and then a 4 sign, I can deduce that the thing that is missing between the two 2's is a plus, right? That is a stupidly simple way of talking about deductive reasoning. So I can say from this, well, if Julie had wanted to hear from the subject, not me, probably best to watch the documentary then, no? Not a video from my channel. That's job 1. That's job 1. In that way. And then I could have also taken offense to the fact that I'm as bad as Piers Morgan. Ugh. Inductive reasoning would connect to the requirement for a pattern in order to prove your work. Now, there are those that have said before, I'm an arrogant prick this, or, you know, I'm a Mr. Know-it-all that, or whatever it is. It's fine. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. There was a sentence that I heard in Lucifer that's kind of appropriate when it comes to opinions, myself included. Is that opinions are like arseholes, in that everybody has one and you rarely want to hear from it. Right? It's true. Anyway, so she would need, I presume, would need to connect a pattern to my being as bad as Piers Morgan in that way. No pattern was presented, therefore the well-reasoned through comment of me being as bad as Piers Morgan falls apart, and I don't take offense to it. Applying the notion of abductive reasoning, stop talking, you are as bad as Piers Morgan, we want to hear from the subject, not you. I can go back through the video and look at the amount of time I spend talking relative to the clip that's being used. There is a lot of me talking. A lot of me talking relative to the clip that's being used. So there is an argument for them wanting to hear from the subject. Perfect. But when we go backwards enough, it still raises that question of, well, why would you click on a video that's so clearly not from the documentary? If it's on my channel, I don't work for the documentary in any way. Abductive reasoning working together to mean that I can look at these all day long, and it's either criticism that I can take in, or hot air that I can let wash over. Stop talking, you're as bad as Piers Morgan. In my reasoned head, I go, no, I'm not. I'm not even really sure what that means. Piers Morgan has a job to interview people. Respective of everyone else's personal opinions about him, his job is to talk to people. And Piers Morgan isn't even in the clip. Right? He's not even in the clip. So the whole thing kind of falls apart that way. I remain happier to have moved through this connection because I've thought about it a little bit more. There's been a disagreement, however noisy it's been attempted to be. There has been a disagreement, and it falls by the wayside as a result. The main one that pops up for me in my life is religion, mostly because I'm about as religious as I am a fucking potato, right? Aside from the arguments that I might look like a potato every now and again. I have no connection of information, be it deductively, inductively, or abductively, to the relevance of any kind of a religion. Does that make me wrong? In someone's eyes, maybe. Does that make me right? In someone's eyes, maybe. I have a number of religious friends. I have a number of spiritual friends. I have a number of, I nearly said supernatural friends. They aren't themselves supernatural, but they are fans of and believe in supernatural things. I have a number of conspiratorial friends in their beliefs, right? You know, the one thing that holds us all together is we can have these disagreements, but they become discussions because we're able to apply reasoning to anything that the person is being said and take something on board. And the big thing that comes out of this is when you apply reasoning to it, you get to go, I was wrong. And it doesn't make you any more of a person or less of a person. It just means that on whatever topic you were talking about, you're wrong. Right? And it's one of those things that connects to the emotions in that particular scenario. There is a great fight to be right, you know, on whatever topic it is. And granted, this doesn't go through all topics, you know, but it does connect to the fact that we struggle to disagree with one another in a healthy way. In a healthy way, you know. So it got me thinking about the other ways in which this can be applied. Just come back to the yeah, very constructive comment from Julie. It was I feel enriched by it. Sorry for the bother, but where can I find the Kickstarter questionnaire? I could not find it. It will have been sent out to you when the Kickstarter closed if you contributed to it. So check your emails is all I can really say from there. It's sent out as an email structure to it. So when we look at a deductive reasoning, right, we might consider it the power of unquestionable logic. It isn't. When we're looking at a deductive reasoning, it's dealing with the elements that can't be refuted. Right? It is a top-down approach to thinking about something. Right? In that we might consider it like a logical chain reaction. This person has had too much to drink, therefore the next morning they feel terrible. That's a pretty solid deduction. But we can only do that from seeing them feel terrible and them saying they went out last night. Right? But yes, this type of thinking is prevalent within law enforcement right the way through. Right the way through. But if you think about it medicinally, right? If you think about it medicinally, doctors use deductive reasoning based on medical knowledge, patient symptoms, and the connected information in order to make diagnoses from there, right? So, when I went to the asthma clinic to get myself checked out, obviously with this being, a nasal, chesty, breathing related illness, not the proper terms, and COVID being one of those things, one of the first things they look for is whether you've been vaccinated and what your symptoms are. Because once you answer those questions, it shapes whatever's left to make better diagnoses on. Right? So if you observe a fever, if you observe a cough and difficulty breathing, could be a chest infection, could be your asthma playing up, could be pneumonia. What deductive connections do you go through in order to disseminate the difference between those possible diagnoses? You would learn more about the significant parameters of pneumonia, of a chest infection, of asthma, in order to make better connections to the information as you see it. Let's have a look. Another comment just come in. Bilbo TNP. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. New to the streams and relatively new to the vids, but been through the whole series and been reading the book for the past 2 days and had to catch you live. Wow. Bilbo, thank you. Well, welcome to the fold. Thanks for being here. Thanks for watching all of the videos, tuning in live and reading the book as well. You must be sick of the sight of me by now. But when you think about it, a mechanic does similar things. A chef does similar things. A teacher does similar things. These roles are built upon this process of learning about what's in front of them in order to make more informed decisions about how they interact with it moving forwards. Right? If we were to look at inductive reasoning, the patterns that are built from the observations that we make. Like, I'm relatively high energy and animated as a person. Now, had I not told you I was ill already, you might notice that I'm a lot less energized than normal. You might make the observation that I sound a little bit different and that I'm coughing. And then the two is connected. The two can be connected, rather, that way around. As one can explain the other. But it doesn't mean it is a definite connection. In this case it is, but it doesn't mean that as a general rule, if you are ill, then you absolutely are less energized. Not the case, right? But if you think about it this way, inductive reasoning is a bottom-up approach, right? Because you have to observe specific instances of something in order to draw the requisite conclusions from them and then formulate your hypothesis from there. Law enforcement, very prevalent. Medicine, very prevalent. In business, inductive reasoning is another one, particularly marketers. In that way, there is an analysis for customer data and the way purchases are made that allow for the formulation of certain demographics to exist, and these marketers, one of the facets of their skills would be to identify what these patterns are, what these trends are within specific areas, to then shape what they do around that in order to make better sales. Inductive reasoning. Science, that's as an ambiguous term, but as a general rule, built on inductive reasoning extensively. Repeated experiments would be one. Observations from the repetition of the experiments to form a better connection around the rules and the principles that they are developing, right? If you observe that apples always fall down, right, it might lead to an inductive conclusion of a universal connection towards gravity. Right. But there are repeated experiments that will try and look into that to try and prove it as a rule. Until then, it remains an inductively reasoned connection to formulate these experiments on. And then we look at abduction. I always say the same, not anywhere near as kidnappy as it sounds right on the surface. But this is an inference towards the best explanation for it, right? So we might think of it as retrograde analysis. One of the classic examples of this is if you imagine a hole in the ground the size of the Grand Canyon, a piece of bacteria. For some reason in this riddle you can see it, a piece of bacteria. And the bacteria doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles and doubles. It doubles every day. It takes 60 days for the Grand Canyon-sized hole to be full of this bacteria. On what day is it half full? Now, the immediate connection might be, oh, shit, this is maths, bacteria. God, how big's the Grand Canyon? 60 days, what time is that? You don't need any of that. You just look at the problem in reverse. Abductive reasoning, working backwards from something. If something doubles going forwards in time, then going backwards, it halves, right? So if on day 60 it's full, going backwards, doubling every day, right? It becomes a lot easier. Mr. Jane got it as well. And we could talk about what, abductive reasoning, law enforcement, medicine, mechanics, chefs, all of these people, teachers, all of these people would have to do that as well. But for the sake of citing another one, let's go customer service roles in an IT department for a technical issue, right? Once you get past the whole turning it off and turning it on again, these representatives of whatever company it is that you're talking to would have to ask questions in order to ascertain the true nature of the problem. So you ask questions, you're able to consider common issues around this and then propose the most likely reason for these types of situations being seen, right? So this type of, oh, here we go. Another comment from Bilbo. Reminds me a lot of Professor Layton puzzles, yeah, where the wording trains you to look at what you're being asked and is written specifically to trick you at what you're doing to solve the problem. Spot on. Spot on. And this is why I'm saying it's one of those kind of ultimate people skills that we've lost as a society, as an age group, when it comes to disagreeing, right? You think of that kind of classic breakdown of the way we make kind of physical assessments of people, right? You walk down the street and the Hell's Angel, big 7 foot tall, long beard, covered in tattoos and leathers and all manner of skull jewelry and this type of thing. Your emotion tells you what this person is like. And then anything that they say afterwards is coloured by that emotional influence. Your reasoning is what will help you to understand what is actually being communicated in whatever setting. Most of my mates that are in by I nearly called them biker gangs. That shows you how not a biker I am. That like to ride motorcycles and wear leathers and are covered in tattoos and big beards and really gigantic muscular individuals are some of the sweetest, most well-read, open-minded, charismatic, wonderful human beings that you would ever hope to meet. And when you step out of that immediate emotive judgment to just reason with whatever information is being said, conversationally, you learn more about each other. As a relationship, it develops, even if you disagree fundamentally on certain things. You can still have a conversation about it, right? A friend of mine set this exercise when talking about the virtues of an individual, right? And he uses his own examples. I'll use one that I've kind of picked on before. Donald Trump. When I ask somebody to tell me about the virtues of Donald Trump, they might immediately go to criminal, racist, sexist, all of these kind of accusations that have been made before. I'm like, okay, that's all your opinion, right? Fine. Tell me about his virtues. Tell me about his virtues. They live outside of the realm of opinion and emotion, right? Tell me about his virtues in that way. And that's when it really starts to open up where people lose their reasoning on. You see it a lot in these videos by these guys. I've no idea what their names are, but it'll be like some kind of controversial view, prove me wrong. Right? Which from the get-go might seem like I have an opinion, let's have a conversation about it. That might be the pretext. But the prove me wrong? It's immediately confrontational. If you were sincerely looking at just having a conversation about it, because these people claim that, when conversation stops, it's when violence starts to happen, and it's true. It's true. But you tip your hand that way. Like if I was to say, I don't know, Jeremy Brett is the best version of Sherlock, prove me wrong. However placidly I say that, it's still a confrontational pretext, which shows you part of its desired end. Right? If we apply inductive reasoning as a connection to a pattern, if they were truly interested in conversation on these topics, wouldn't be on the internet. Right? Like, truly, as a pure interest in conversation on these topics, wouldn't be on the internet. Uh, Mr. Jane, people care about being right rather than finding the truth. No, I am wrong. Elementary version is better. Yeah, well, that's just another opinion. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I used to have this joke in my shows because I do a routine about the different versions of Sherlock. So in that context, the line would have been, so there is largely two camps for the fans of Elementary. Those that know that the Elementary version of Sherlock was the worst, and those that are wrong. Right, just kind of poking fun at the whole topic, really. But if we look at it as a vehicle to learn more about people, the world we live in, the jobs that we do, the people that we know, the people that they know, right? Critical thinking might sound like a fancy sort of stock up, snooty way of approaching certain things, but it isn't. All it's really saying is look at the information that you're interacting with for the sake of what the information is, not some skewered opinion of it. Deduction, induction, and abduction, they all encourage you to analyze information objectively and question your assumptions. Like, how many people have seen a news article on whatever social media platform you frequent, seen a news article, and it stirred up some kind of negativity within them? Oh, this is outrageous. That article has just bypassed your critical thinking completely. Right? Because our first thought should be, and again, when I say should be, this is an opinion, bear in mind. Our first thought should be, where's the article coming from? How do we know what the journalist is basing it on? How do we know that this company is reputable, and and so on and so forth that way? And then we look at problem solving that it connects to, that we use critical thinking in order to solve problems. These methods provide frameworks for tackling challenges by breaking them down into logical steps, either drawing on past experiences or the confirmable information that you can interact with in that particular way. Right? So, say for example, when I'm insulted online, right, which happens a lot, right? It happens. Somebody can say, what's a random insult? My love, give me a random insult that could be thrown at me.
Boring.
I'm boring. Right? On the one hand, with that, thank you. On the one hand, with that, you've just heard my wife call me boring. And so there is a reason I'm going to cry. No, I'm only kidding. For somebody to call you boring, if I'm going to think about that critically and take offense to it, I have to entertain the notion that I might be. Staged. Yeah, well, it could be. We could have rehearsed that all day. We didn't. She just genuinely finds me boring and wish I would shut up more than I actually tend to. But yeah, there would be a part of that in order for my feelings to be hurt, to entertain that it must be true. If somebody calls me boring, I can critically think about that and go, all right, let's inquire, let's ask questions. Is it me that's boring? Is it the delivery of what I'm talking about that's boring? Is it what I'm talking about that's boring? Is it some kind of combination of it? And once you understand that that motivation for the attempted insult, you can navigate that journey better with a little bit more emotive intelligence, with a little bit more interactional intelligence, and therefore you'll make better decisions as a result, because you're not so reactionary, you're not so impulsive. If anything, your impulses are directly connected towards critically thinking about the things that you interact with, as opposed to just some kind of a reaction, which leads to more effective communication skills. And when you're communicating with others, the ability to communicate your own point effectively, properly, directly, accurately is key. It's key to understanding. How many times have arguments started because one person misunderstood another one? Right? They might not be very intense arguments, but it happens frequently. No, that's not what I meant. And then you have to explain. So there we go. I said I was going to try and keep it to a short one, and we are at 40 minutes. So that shows you again what I consider to be a short discussion, even when my chest isn't really doing what it should be. So yeah, with that in mind, guys, food for thought on how we can approach troubling times with a little bit more critique. Not being critical, but a little bit more critique and a little bit more understanding. And the notion of, just because I disagree with you doesn't mean I don't like you. We just disagree, Mr. J. Because Jeremy Brett's the best. On that note, guys, I'm going to love you and leave you. And I'll see you next time.